I'm psychologist Dr. Bryan Violet, and on today's Snapshot, we'll be looking at highlights from my conversation with longtime friend and former tennis pro, Andrew Salick. We'll be exploring the psychological dimensions of tennis and the implications of such for his career in wealth management. This is the Catholic Center Show.
When does the joke come about that I change outfits from segment 1 to segment 2?
We have a wardrobe.
We have a word
swap between segments.
Andrew Salick's the only guest that has his own stylist that changes outfits.
Pause for makeup. I always wondered whether tennis for you was something you were forced into, because you took it pretty far. And a lot of times you have these young prodigies
right.
that are really successful, the Tiger Woods of the
right.
world, but you hear, I just think like Tiger Woods or like Michael Jackson, right, where they're so good because it was forced upon them at a young age. That was not your experience?
No, and I did see that in tennis. I mean, it's every sport, but tennis for sure. Growing up playing the junior tournaments, I saw a lot of these kids that were being forced into it, and some of them were actually the best, and they were very good because they were forced to play a lot. I mean, you can get good at things if you the repetition and doing them, doing that, playing tennis, for example, being on the court for hours a day. Obviously, you can get good, but no, I was not forced into it. I genuinely loved it.
That's why you still do,
and I still play.
Yeah.
So I was lucky. It's a great sport. It could be a lonely sport at times. I feel like there's a lot of pressure. You can't rely on a teammate to pick you up. If you lose a match, it's
on you.
Your fault.
Yeah.
It's no one else's fault.
Unless you play doubles, then you blame your partner.
Yeah. But it does, there's just a lot of parallels to, and you and I have talked about this before. It's just kind of even in the business world or just in general, taking some of that responsibility and like having to be disciplined, right? And the accountability aspect. Like you could take a lot of these skills that I think I learned through the sport of tennis and apply them to my work, to your family life. You
lose that in team sports a little bit because you can diffuse the responsibility.
Right.
But tennis, it's on you. And so you learn how to really take it on.
Right.
Is that ever problematic for you? Do you ever find that like you take on too much responsibility in your life?
That's a good question. Now that you're asking it, maybe. I don't know, I'm not even sure if I've ever thought about it.
Never thought about it that way. You never.
But
thought
maybe.
You ever thought like something's not like thought through? It's like, well, this actually wasn't my fault, but I feel guilty about something which maybe I shouldn't. Has that ever happened?
Yeah, maybe
I'm fishing. I'm a psychologist.
Yeah, you're fishing. Yeah, you're a psychologist, right? I think so.
Yeah.
I think it has, and I think part of that could be a little bit, of those parallels. But no, obviously, I think the pros outweigh those cons significantly.
Yeah.
But I think there definitely is a little bit of that, for sure.
No, I admire it. And I want to talk about your professional career in a little bit because I want to talk about how the psychology transfers across. But I still want to stick with tennis for a moment because, you're a former tennis pro.
Yeah.
You really took it far. Through college, after college, and I have so many questions about that because you see it from the outside looking in, but I'm interested in what it was like for you going through it. And I guess the first question I would ask is, what were some of the, I want to talk about the moments you had during the experience. Have you had, what was your best moment ever playing collegiate or professional tennis or high school tennis? Looking back on that, what will you always remember as the pinnacle of experiences that felt the best?
Right. Oh man, there's a lot of good memories out there. And tennis players, it is interesting, and you kind of talk to other tennis players, and the memories are there from all the highs and all the lows, because you're out there on your own, right? So you kind of remember these things, and they're embedded. And probably a couple. It's hard to pick one. I do think, going back now to my youth, to juniors, being able to capture the state open for my senior year for Connecticut, winning the entire, the Class M tournament, and then funneling into the actual championship tournament, which was the winners of all the classes.
How old were you?
18. Yeah. So,
did you have delusions of grandeur? Were you like, I will take on Federer?
Yeah.
Did you have a sense of how good you were at 18?
No. Yeah. Well, I actually knew, because I played national tournaments. I actually played in a couple international tournaments in my teenage years. So I knew where I stacked up. Actually, at that same exact year, when I was a senior at high school, I was ranked I was in the top 100 at one point, but the year end ended just outside of the top 100 in the country. And that year, interestingly enough, Andy Roddick was ranked number 1 in the country, and I was, because he was the same age, and he obviously went on to win a U.S. Open and, played Federer in multiple Wimbledon finals. So, but I've played tournaments where I didn't play against Andy, but I was there and I was competing in the same tournament. So I could see the level of like who's the top in the country.
Was he like on the level at the time?
Yeah, huge serve. There's definitely another level there, but it's weird. Once you get to like a high level and you're out there and you're playing, the sport becomes so much more mental.
It's splitting hairs, like who's better than who.
Which you would love this aspect of it when you really kind of deep dive and analyze. It's like, okay, for the most part, if you're top, like if I'm the top player in Connecticut or if I'm winning tournaments, like you have to be fit. Sure. You have to be able to hit your ground. You have to be able to hit every shot. So it's not like the differences aren't necessarily so much on a physical standpoint.
Everyone's fit.
Everyone's fit. Everyone can hit the shots. Like that is out there. And this goes for the pro level too. It's the mental part of the game.
I love this.
Because it's, and people always say, and who's going to come up with these ratios or percentages? But
90% of sports.
People, 80% of tennis is mental. The 20% is physical. I don't know where it really shakes out, but I do agree with the fact that when you get to a very high level, the mental outweighs the physical significantly.
What are the pitfalls mentally?
If you're doubting yourself, right? So the mental ability to be confident, go for the right shots. You know what I'm saying? Like those moments, if you're playing in a finals of a tournament, it's a really close match, to be able to like rise to the occasion, to outbeat the nerves. There's a whole stress factor there.
Okay, so stress reduction, that's one.
Stress reduction for sure.
What about like, is there a pressure to be perfect?
Yeah.
To not make a mistake on the court?
Yeah.
And I imagine adjusting.
Yep.
Like if I make a mistake, how do I emotionally recover?
Right.
Do I spiral? Or do I see that as, can I move on? Can I be present in the moment?
Right.
That's probably huge, right? Being present in the moment.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Or adapting your game against the opponent you're playing that day. Because I might have played someone in the round before who had a totally different style of game that I had to play a certain way.
Yeah.
But now I play Bryan, and Bryan's game is different.
Yes.
So what are Bryan's weaknesses? How do I attack your weakness?
There are many. There are many weaknesses in my tennis game.
But it is different, and the mental, usually the 5-10 minutes that you have warming up against an opponent are critical, because you're trying to figure out like what am I going to attack here? Can you pick
stuff up on that during that?
You have to.
During the warm up.
Yeah, during the warm up, you figure out.
Like what? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, I mean, if I could figure out that you're not comfortable at the net, your volleys
based on what, like your posture.
Well, when you're warming up, first you're hitting ground strokes. You're hitting every shot. They give each person gets a chance to volley, hit overheads, hitting serves.
But aren't you going like at like 50%? Like you're not really.
It's kind of warming in. You're easing into it, but I could pick up on like your technique, or I could see like, oh man, like your backhand is much weaker than your forehand. So maybe when we get into baseline rallies, I'm going to hit to the backhand. Yeah, there's a lot of that.
And then where did you learn that? Are you coached to think that way?
Yeah, coaches for sure.
Like to analyze your opponent.
Analyze your opponent, figure out like what strategy are you going to go into.
Yeah.
Then once you get into these tournaments, and it's like the top. So I'm winning that state tournament, which I'd said is probably that's one of my best moments, and my family and my friends were all there. So that's what makes it like such a special moment,
Of course.
But when like even playing New England tournaments, and I'm top 10 in New England, and a lot of times you're playing against the same, like when you get to the semis or the finals, you're playing against the same people.
Yeah.
So I would have already known. It's like I played Bryan 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And this is what worked. This is what didn't work. Like
sometimes people get better though.
Yeah.
And they surprise you.
True. Or maybe you had a bad day.
Right.
Or something like that.
And you're overconfident.
Right.
Does that happen too?
Yeah, that can happen too.
Wow.
I know. That's why the mental piece is like really critical. And I think that, when you go out there, it's like, it's this battle. I mean, you're battling yourself because you're trying to compete at a high level.
I love this. In another life, I would have been a sports psychologist. I love this conversation.
I knew you would, because it is very analytical, and there's so much you can uncover.
Yes.
Yeah, it's key.
About yourself.
Yeah.
And about other people.
Right.
Anything else you can think of in terms of like the psychological dimension to playing, like while you're playing? Fatigue, how you feel when you're tired, I guess pushing through, fortitude.
Yeah, I think kind of like just the ability to just, in a way, sometimes tennis becomes this, I mean, it's a battle of attrition, but you're just trying to outwill your opponent, and I've had a lot of matches where it's like, you could be playing for hours.
Like which one of you will give up first?
Yeah.
We'll give into the fatigue.
We'll give into the fatigue. We'll crack. Who's basically, who, I don't want to say who wants it more, but in a way, like, Who wants it more?
Who wants it more?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a real thing.
Yeah, right?
Right. And to me, now I can get like real weird here for a moment, but
I like it.
what is the it that
The weirder the better.
what is the it that someone wants? And why do they want it more than the other person? That's when it gets weird. So is the it is defeating someone, being better than someone.
Right.
And then you can get into,
Why is that so important?
Why, like, what does it mean?
Right.
If you're not better, are you
I know.
less of a person?
I know.
Are you not lovable?
Right.
I think there's something wonderful about competition. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a real danger psychologically when you put yourself above someone else in a way that puts them down. Right, when it becomes like I will step on you to be better and feel better about me.
Right.
I think there's so many. That's a cheater, right? I'll do anything
to win.
Right?
Yeah.
You think of Michael Jordan, maniacal about winning.
Yeah.
Probably at the expense of his own psychology. It's not healthy to be Michael Jordan.
No.
Even though we'll remember him as the best ever. The question is at what cost.
Right? And imagine being his teammate.
Oh yeah. Well, he was not a great teammate.
No.
You hear that over and over again. But I guess my question is. So, there needs to be a space, though, where we want to do our best.
Right.
And we want someone else to do their best. And at the end, there happens to be a score.
And a winner and a loser.
A winner and a loser. But in terms of the way we approach it, I really want them to do their best, and I will their good. That's the healthiest psychological approach.
Right.
But I imagine it's really about there's either, I don't know about you, but I'm sure you've at least encountered some people where it's about stepping on someone. Stepping on their neck to be better than them. Because if they don't, then
right.
What?
Right. I know it's a weird thing. And I, thankfully, although my wife Lauren might disagree with this, but I think I'm a much better loser now than I was at my younger age. But I just hated losing. I just hated it. And so, but then this is to your point about uncovering this, it's why, Andrew, why were you so upset when you lost? You work hard at something, you love it. I'm passionate about the sport. I want to take it as far as I can go.
Yeah.
And by winning,
there's
you're doing
validation
that.
of that.
There's validation of that.
Yes.
Right. And if you go out there,
so it would invalidate all the work you put in if you lose.
Yeah, or maybe just kind of question well, why? What am I spending all these hours on the court? Or
I've suffered so much to get here.
Yeah.
Now that suffering becomes meaningless.
All the sweat, all the hours, even money spent, geez, my mom is spending money on coaches to help me get better. And then all of a sudden, if you can't perform, you feel was it worth it or something? I don't know.
That's
it's a
lot
weird
of pressure on a young kid though.
It is. Yeah. And I think that's actually why I think a lot of players get burnt out.
Well, okay. Well, let's take the segue. Let's ride it.
Yeah.
Blue collar background.
Yeah.
You're not in construction now. You are you work in high finance. You work in wealth management. Wealth management.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that some of your psychological experiences when you were playing tennis have likely transferred over to your professional career now. In what ways?
I think so. I think that there's a lot of things that have transitioned nicely. I think, my job is great and I love it. And it's high stress, it's pressure, but there's a lot of relationship building, the families I work with, right? So just as background.
Well, let's just say what you
investing.
You invest. You help invest.
I'm helping
money
families invest.
Hopefully you make more money for people.
High net worth families, individual investors. I do work with a segment of my book of business is with nonprofit clients. So I manage the endowments, which is a really fun component. So it's actually a lot of local area nonprofits where they've entrusted me to manage the endowment fund, which then helps support their mission. So that's a really cool thing.
You like the missions?
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but the missions themselves?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Each one of my nonprofit clients, and they're all different. Some of them are education based. A lot of them are kind of these classic kind of do-gooder nonprofits that are trying to solve a certain problem that exists.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. Yeah. So I think that my by way of background, my firm, we are an investment consulting firm, and I'm one of the consultants that helps families and nonprofit clients manage their money. Yeah. Help their money grow, hopefully, is the goal.
That's
obviously.
the goal. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that, that having that level of trust is important, but having that pressure to perform. It's kind of like the tennis. We talked about that. Is okay, like my clients rely on me, like Andrew, and I
That's
have
a lot of stress.
I have a team behind me, right? There's folks at the front. Like it's not like I'm a sole proprietorship. Like I do have a team behind each relationship, and I've got the folks that do the manager research, and we have our investment committee. So there is kind of the whole suite of services where you don't feel like necessarily it's, just Bryan or just Andrew. But clients, when they have issues or when they're wanting to talk, my clients are going to me. Yeah. And if there's a problem, that becomes my problem. And if things are going really well, then I get credited for that. Yeah. So I think
that sounds a lot like tennis.
Yeah. It does. Yeah. I know. It's really kind of cool. And I didn't, it's almost happenstance. I don't know that as I entered my career in finance that I would have back then as an early, 20-year-old known that what I learned on the tennis court and everything that I did getting to that level of competition and tennis would then help me in my job. But it has. Yeah. A lot.
I mean, it's life. I mean, we like our early psychological experiences get projected onto whatever comes our way later on.
Right.
So they're transferable psychological realities. Fortitude. What we mentioned before. Fortitude, staying calm under pressure. I mean, you have a career that involves a lot of pressure. There's a lot of responsibility. I mean, I would have a lot of sleepless nights if I did what you did, what you do. What else did we say? Pressure.
The accountability.
Accountability, flexibility. Yeah, responsibility. All these things, like you need that,
right?
Not just in work. I mean, like in your family.
Yeah.
I mean, raising kids isn't always the most streamlined of experiences. Marriage isn't always,
right.
Sunshine and rainbows. You got to hang in there. You got to work it through. You got to be flexible.
Totally.
You got to adjust. Two people try to build a shared life together, and then raise children. It's work. It's commitment, and I can see how tennis played a major role in that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm very happy about that because I do think that, it is a high stress job, and I oftentimes think about like, wow, these families have entrusted, me.
But are you stressed day to day, or are you chill? You are.
I do, and I hopefully it's not like on my sleeve that I'm wearing it, But
I don't see it. That's why I'm asking because I think you do a really good job of being present and being pretty jovial.
Thank you. I know.
But you feel the stress?
Yeah. Every day there's just a lot. The markets are changing every day. They're dynamic. Every single client has their own unique circumstances and challenges and obstacles they're trying to overcome. So it's just, you're having every single day. Like when I go to work, it's like having to, solve problems and be a strategic thinker and being able to come up with creative solutions. Like there's just a lot of that. But then there's also the stress of like, oh my gosh, 2022, for example, was an abysmal year for the markets, not just stock market, but fixed income too. Your job, I mean, I think about this too. You have found a sweet spot with what you do because I feel like, and you mentioned about, with me and my career and why it fits, but I feel like your role now is something that is not surprising at all. I mean, you've always been like a deep thinker, like ever since we were younger. This is that's what you're doing is perfect, I feel like. And it's just, it's right in your wheelhouse.
I feel like I found my niche. It's an interesting bridge between worlds right now with this show.
Yeah.
Because, when we're hanging out with our social group, when we get the opportunity to, because it's hard to get that time, but I think most of our friends don't really see the side of me that you're even seeing right now. I imagine that this is kind of unique and a little weird for you to see me I'm not in therapist mode fully. I mean, this is not fully me in therapist mode, but I certainly borrow from my clinical skills to interview people.
Oh yeah.
And ask the right questions and try and get something interesting to pull out of them. And so it's kind of strange for even to just put this on video, to have other people that know me in a different capacity to see different parts of me here, like conducting an interview and engaging with people on this level.
Well, there's a skill there too, and I feel like you have the ability to take a certain theme and really dig into it and go deep with it.
Yes.
I mean, it's one thing asking one question, but to be able to have multiple follow-ups on that and to be able to continue to let someone speak and really uncover things.
Yeah.
That's an art form, I think.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of training. It's also a little weird because there's a camera on right now.
Right.
Like we're both kind of aware that people are watching us. Like if there was a wall and it was just you and I,
right.
I mean, I would pursue a lot of different questions in a deeper way.
Right.
So it's not exactly clinical work. Interviewing is slightly different than clinical work.
Right.
But certainly that comes up.
Right.
It comes up, and I feel grateful that I have the chance to do something very unique. I think the whole psychology and religion thing is pretty unique in the world today.
Yeah.
It's very niche, but I think people are interested in it if they have the time and space to be interested. Yes.
And I don't know, but you bring up a good point. Like, why is it now, more popular, or we feel like it's more prevalent? I mean, I even think, again, not to go back to the tennis thing, but like there's so many more tennis players that are outspoken now about working with a sports psychologist and dealing with working with a therapist because of these things we talked about earlier about the pressures and the stress, and being able to like just get it all out there, get it all out. Right. And someone like Naomi Osaka, who's, she won, multiple Grand Slams and is like, takes a hiatus from the sport because she feels like, geez, it's just, I'm overwhelmed. This is too much.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Mental health thing has obviously come out more now. So I wonder, I think there's...
What's your reaction to that? Personally, are you like, come on?
A little bit.
Play tennis.
A little bit, but also
and I would understand
empathetic to it too.
Okay. So you have both parts of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I love this conversation, by the way. It's a very interesting topic. Like, you hear about some of these players who also, they don't go to the press after their matches. That's too stressful for them or stuff. Like, they don't, because they have anxiety over the questions and the reporters. Like,
And you as a fan who just want to know about them too.
So part of me is kind of like, well, part of your job as a professional athlete is to respond to those things and be in the press box and answer questions so that the fan base and
like almost like suck it up.
Suck it up and do it. This is part of like your job. You clearly want to become a professional tennis player.
Right.
You knew that that's part of the gig.
Yep.
So part of me is like, geez, just suck it up. But then there's another part of me that's like, wow, like if someone's really struggling, or like if someone's dealing with deeper issues inside.
Definitely.
Like, who am I to be like, suck it up?
Right. Yeah.
Like
compassion, mercy. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah. So it's interesting, but you don't. It's such a weird thing because a generation ago, or even like 10 years ago, this was not like really a thing. I mean, it's becoming a thing. I'm talking about like this tennis now. Like, you didn't know, there's a lot of players now.
No one would ever say that. Yeah.
There's a lot of players now that are, again, they're like refusing to go into the press sessions and different stuff. And like, I don't remember, that was never a thing. It was always kind of like, all right, you finish your match, you got to go answer questions. Like, this is part of it.
It's almost like a second skill set that people had to develop.
Yeah.
Like being in front of a camera.
Right.
I've heard also that it's interesting with the young athletes today, which was very different than when we were growing up, is that the athletes today are growing up with a camera on them anyway. Cell phones.
Instagram.
All of that.
Everything.
So it's normal. It's normal for them. For us, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Even this is kind of weird for me to have cameras on us. Like, from a viewer perspective, nobody wants manicured personas.
Right.
They want the real you. Because one of the most interesting thing is everybody's scared to be vulnerable. And men don't even like the word vulnerable anymore.
Right.
Authentic sounds a lot better. Right?
Right.
Like, nobody wants to be really authentic in this world.
Right.
But whenever you see someone else being authentic, inside you're like, wow.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. Like,
yes.
That's courageous.
Yes.
I appreciate
I
that.
appreciate that.
But still, we have that block.
I wish I could do that.
I wish I could do that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's so interesting. We don't want to show ourselves, but when someone else does, we approve of it.
Yeah.
Almost,
yeah.
I mean, there's people that, it's like the Batman, I think of the Batman film and Alfred, some people want to watch the world burn. Like, there are people who are haters. Haters exist.
Haters exist.
By and large, people who are generally healthy are appreciative of vulnerability.
I totally agree.
And that's what I want to create with the show, but I have to model it. And I have to be me more and more and more and more.
Right.
So it's something I'm working on.
I love that.
One day at a time.
We all have things we have to work on. Right?
Definitely.